All right, welcome back to the Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into a tactical mission briefing on the operational mechanics of the P5 impact analysis. Look, if you're managing projects or leading sustainability efforts, you already know that projects are what actually drive change. But today, we're really going to master a specific framework for safeguarding the environmental, social, and economic systems that those projects touch. Let's dive in. Your mission briefing is broken down into 5 core phases. First, we'll establish the high stakes. Second, we'll decode the P5IA itself. Third, we'll tackle identifying and scoring impacts. Fourth, we'll cover the absolutely crucial no masking rule. And finally, translating all of that intelligence into your sustainability management plan. Starting with Section 1, the high stakes and the unseen impacts of our work. So here's the cinematic reality of what we do. Projects don't just, deliver a new piece of software or construct a building. They are massive generators of unseen impacts. And a lot of times, those unseen consequences can seriously degrade our living systems. Good intentions? Totally useless here. To actually manage these hidden impacts, we need a disciplined tactical framework. We have to figure out how our projects maintain, degrade, restore, or actually enhance system capacity over the long haul. There is a line from the source material that really hits the nail on the head. Sustainability cannot remain descriptive. It must be operationalized. Think about that for a second. Spotting the impacts is great, but it's just not enough. We have to operationalize sustainability. It literally has to be baked right into your project scope, your risk management, and your governance. Moving on to Section 2, decoding the P5IA, which is essentially our main diagnostic arsenal. What you're looking at here is basically your map of the territory, the P5 ontology. It's a brilliantly structured way to evaluate your project through 5 distinct lenses across the core domains of people, planet, and prosperity. You're examining the product perspective through things like lifespan and servicing, and the process perspective through efficiency, effectiveness, and fairness. When you map your project against categories like labor practices or biological diversity, you're making sure absolutely no significant impact slips through the cracks. So what is the P5 impact analysis, or P5IA, in practice? Simply put, it's a mechanism to evaluate how your project's activities, its results, and its overall life cycle characteristics actually affect social structures, environmental systems, and economic performance. It is definitely not just a box-ticking exercise. It forces us to ask the really tough questions, not just about what we're building, but how we're building it and what happens to it long after the project team packs up and goes home. All right, Section 3, identifying and scoring impacts. Let's get into the rules of engagement. Here are the step-by-step mechanics of how you actually do this. Step 1, you identify the events across the P5 elements. Step 2, describe their causes. Step 3, rate the impacts based on their magnitude. Step 4, identify what your mitigation or enhancement responses are going to be. And Step 5, this is the big one, you re-rate those impacts assuming your responses are successfully implemented. This whole process is what justifies making changes to your resources, your scope, or your delivery strategy. When it comes to rating, you're using a super strict 1 to 5 scale. Notice how clear these thresholds are. A score of 1 is severe degradation, meaning significant harm with 0 mitigation. A 2 is degradation. A 3 means you're at baseline condition, so you're not making things materially better or worse. A 4 is a net improvement. And a 5? That is a net positive enhancement. That's where you're measurably improving the system's capacity and delivering real positive value. Let's ground this with a micro scenario straight from the text. Imagine you're building a net zero ice cream factory. Sounds amazing on paper, right? But wait, if you apply the product lifespan lens and realize there's no local renewable energy available, and this facility has to rely entirely on a dirty, high-emission external power grid to get its electricity, well, suddenly, your brilliant green project has a severe degradation score hiding right there in the shadows. And that brings us to a really common trap. Say your project scores a 3.8 in people, a 3.2 in planet, and a 4.0 in prosperity. You run the numbers, you calculate an average score of 3.67, you show that to your stakeholders, and everyone high-fives because they assume the mission is a huge success. But hold on a second. That leads us to Section 4, the no masking rule. This is literally the prime directive of the whole framework. Because relying on averages is incredibly dangerous. Ask yourself this. If a project generates massive financial prosperity, but it completely destroys a local water supply, should we ever call that a success? Can strong financial returns just erase severe environmental damage? The answer is a hard no. and that is governed by the no masking rule. It simply dictates that a severe negative impact in one domain absolutely cannot be offset or concealed by positive performance in another. A great score in financial prosperity doesn't cancel out a human rights violation. You cannot hide severe degradation behind a high score somewhere else. If you just average things out, you get what we call a masked score. But under this rule, if any single element holds an unmitigated score of 1, representing severe degradation, your overall project score is forcefully capped at a maximum of 3. That becomes your true score. It's a brilliant mechanism because it completely prevents serious harm from being hidden, ensuring that decision makers see the actual risk profile of the project. Finally, Section 5, translating all of this to the SMP, or mission control. Because identifying the threat is really only half the battle. Now you have to translate those scores into actionable governance. You assess the impacts, compare them against your organizational thresholds, and then you funnel that intelligence straight into developing your Sustainability Management Plan, or SMP. That's how you assign action owners and get the material data you need to support ESG disclosures. Think of your SMP as mission control. It's what formalizes your governance and accountability. It integrates that P5IA snapshot you just took. It defines the strict impact thresholds that'll trigger an escalation if you breach them. It sets up your KPIs to measure performance and outlines your planned responses to minimize any negative hits. Honestly, without the SMP, your P5IA is just a piece of paper. The SMP is how you actually manage the work. I want to wrap up with a really powerful quote from the P5 standard. If a standard cannot demonstrate relevance to the global disclosure system, it remains conceptual. At the end of the day, your project's impact data is going to flow into enterprise reporting. So the big question you need to ask yourself is this: but using the P5IA and the SMP, are you finally prepared to ensure your project stands up to rigorous global scrutiny? Or will your sustainability commitments just remain a nice concept? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and let's keep building better systems.